A recent book of yours, On the Move, Poems About Migration, tells us about your family life as a child of Jewish migrants. Can you tell us how the book began?
When I was a boy, my dad said something very strange to me. And he would say this quite often and with a rather sad voice. He'd say, I had two French uncles living in France, and they were there at the beginning of the war, and they weren't there at the end. And me and my brother would say, what happened to them? And my dad would just shrug. And then he said something that Jewish people did say then and still do. He said they were probably killed or died in the camps. Now, this was all very mysterious when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. How could they have disappeared? What were these terrible places called the camps where you could disappear? Well, I'll cut a long story short, but some of you will know that there was this terrible time in the Second World War, which we call the Holocaust, and many millions of people died. 6 million of them were people of Jewish origin or Jews like me. And this was because the Nazis took over Germany. So this is the story that was in my family and I didn't know about. So from about the age of, I don't know, maybe I started when I was about 30 anyway, I tried to find out what my dad didn't know. And so this was like a long detective hunt with all sorts of dead ends and surprises. And the more I did it, the more interested and involved I got, because family history is often very exciting. Maybe some people will know parents and grandparents who've done this, and you find all sorts of things, or maybe you watch the TV program, Who Do You Think You Are? And in these, you find out some of these terrible things, and that's what happened to me. And as I found them out, I started writing. And sometimes I wrote down what in school we call recounts, and other times I wrote poems, because poems are very good for expressing feelings. And also when you don't know something, because you can just ask a question in a poem. That's what's great about poems. You don't have to answer the questions, you can just ask them. And so that's what I did. And then the more I did that, the more I got to realize that though I was born in this country and have always lived in this country, that my background is of people who are migrants. So these French uncles, in fact, started out life in Poland. Then they migrated to France. And then, tragically, they were taken out of France, across Germany, back into Poland, which was then ruled by the Nazis. And that's where they were killed. But I discovered they were not only migrants, but they were refugees, because two of them tried to run away. They became what the French call clandestins. That means clandestine or kind of secret. And so I suddenly found that I had something, not me, but my family, in common with the people I was watching on the telly, migrants and refugees, asylum seekers. These were like my forebears, as we call them, the people who came before me. And so that, if you like, gave me a spur, that means a push, gave me a push to write some more and to write more about my background, things that I've heard about migrants, more about what happened to my relatives. And so all that went into that book, On the Move, Poems About Migration.